I think those who have a terminal illness and are in great pain should have the right to choose to end their lives, and those that help them should be free from prosecution.
Karen Ann Quinlan was born on March 15, 1954 in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Karen was adopted as a child by Julia and Joseph Quinlan, a Christian family, and lived with them in New Jersey. She lived happily with her new parents, achieved average grades, and was popular among her peers. At the age of 21, Quinlan and a few friends attended a birthday party which ended with traumatic consequences. While socializing with her friends, Quinlan ingested several alcoholic drinks and the sedative Valium. By adding the two substances together, it is known to have adverse reactions, including memory loss and the loss of consciousness. Karen experienced a feeling of dizziness and requested to be driven home. Shortly after lying in bed, a family member noticed her breathing seemed minimal and an ambulance was immediately called. She was driven to Newton Memorial Hospital and emergently placed on a ventilator as she was no longer breathing on her own. After 5 months of continuous ventilator support, she was declared to be in an irreversible coma or a persistent vegetative state. Eventually, Quinlan was sent to St. Clair's Hospital for long-term care and treatment. Mr. and Mrs. Quinlan believed that the ventilator was unnaturally prolonging Karen's terminal condition. They mutually agreed that since recovery was not possible, they would cease life support to end their daughter's suffering. On July 31st, 1975, Karen's family requested that she should be removed from all medical life support. When the doctors and hospital refused to cooperate with their wishes, Joseph Quinlan began legal action to require the hospital to follow his request. Hospitals exist to treat disease and improve the health of its patients. Ben Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the first USA hospital, stated that hospitals are used to care for the sick, poor, and insane who are wandering the streets of Philadelphia. In the case of Karen Ann Quinlan, the hospital was not treating her condition nor improving her health. Since the doctors and medical staff knew she was not going to recover, life support was simply keeping her in a vegetative state. This means the person has very little brain activity, cannot move, and requires a feeding tube for nutrition. Mr. Quinlan urged the doctors to take Karen off life support to end suffering, not to commit murder. This is the same idea why people put animals out of their misery with lethal injections. The hospital and Karen's doctors initially agreed to remove her life support, but then rejected the idea. Her physicians were concerned that they would be accused of euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide, which is illegal in New Jersey. Euthanasia refers to a doctor withdrawing life support of a terminally ill patient at the request of a family member or legal guardian. Euthanasia is only legal in 4 states: Oregon, Vermont, Washington, and Montana. A family's right to allow their loved one to die versus a hospital's responsibility to preserve life first came to the public's attention in the case of Karen Ann Quinlan. Joseph Quinlan first attempted to force the hospital to carry out his request by suing the hospital. This was unsuccessful because the court rejected the case and assigned a new guardian to Karen. Ultimately, the case was presented to the New Jersey Supreme Court. It was accepted, and there were 7 total judges ruling on this case. The hospital told the family that they would not participate in carrying out anything extreme or dangerous to the patient. Quinlan's attorney argued that Mr. Quinlan believes that keeping Karen on a respirator is cruel and against his religious morals. The court did not agree that this was a violation of his religious rights and considered two more aspects of the law. The court considered the Eighth Amendment, which states that cruel and unusual punishment is not tolerated. The court also ruled against this idea because Quinlan was not being tortured nor considered a criminal. Finally, the Supreme Court evaluated this case as a violation to a person's right to privacy. This principle states that a person's right to privacy includes refusing medical treatment in certain and special cases. The Quinlans won the case and were allowed to remove Karen's life support.
And ultimately, as you know, the New Jersey Supreme Court rules in his favor and makes him the guardian of Karen Ann Quinlan, his daughter, because before the lower courts had provided a court-appointed guardian. They took guardianship away from the family, and the New Jersey Supreme Court said no. Mr. Quinlan is a loving parent and deserves to make decisions for his daughter.
Although Karen was expected to die in a matter of days, she continued living in a vegetative state for 9 more years. Death eventually occurred as a result of pneumonia on June 11, 1985, but her legacy continued. The case of Karen Ann Quinlan had a strong influence on the Right to Die movement. Some Americans realized that people should not have to suffer on the edge of life and death. A family should have a right to cease life support, but it is also the hospital's responsibility to keep patients healthy. Karen's experience began the idea of a living will. A living will is written by an individual while they are mentally capable and aware. It is a list that tells a family what to do if they fall into a coma. One of those steps could be to pull the plug on life support, as in the case of Karen Ann Quinlan. It is the right of an individual to predetermine the extent of medical support to be utilized in the event of terminal illness. It is also the responsibility of the family and healthcare providers to respect those predetermined guidelines.